What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics, and today we got a reaction to the Bee Gees, their top 10 songs, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter and patron of the channel, Richard. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. We could not do it without the patrons. Appreciate it so much. All right, Richard says, I really enjoy them, but not so much their disco year. So I'm going to give you a little sneak preview into this top 10. None of the disco songs are on here. So you may be disappointed and you may be happy. But I'm going to give you some background on the Bee Gees. Look, we only have one album reaction up to the Bee Gees and not a lot else. I mean, I've watched their documentary on HBO a few years ago. Fantastic group. I know they're a lot bigger in other areas of the world than here in the United States besides the disco era. But and I just don't know a lot about them, right? I don't have that many holes in my musical knowledge now that we've been doing this channel for 5.5 years. But the Bee Gees are one of them, so I'm looking forward to this. The Bee Gees were formed in 1958. Of course, brothers Barry, Robin, and Morris Gibb. The group sang recognizable three-part tight harmonies. Robin's clear vibrato lead vocal were a hallmark of their earlier hits, while Barry's, of course, R&B falsetto, which I can kind of imitate, but I'm going to spare you that, became their signature sound during the mid to late 70s and 80s. They wrote all their own original material. I think that's always a positive, as well as writing and producing several major hits for other artists and regarded as one of the most important and influential acts in pop music history. I mean, I know the history behind that, but after the disco era, there was such a backlash by the public and by the record company that's why they started writing songs more often for other people. Born on the Isle of Man to English parents, they lived in Chorlton, Manchester, England until the late 50s. There, in 1955, they formed the skiffle rock and roll group, the Rattlesnakes. It's a good name for a group, right? The family then moved to Redcliffe in the Moreton Bay region, Queensland, Australia, later to Crib Island. After achieving their first chart success in Australia as the Bee Gees, they returned to the UK in January of 1967 when producer Robert Stigwood began promoting them to a worldwide audience. Of course, the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack in 1977 was the turning point of their career. Although they were, like I said, already wildly famous in a lot of the rest of the world, both the film and soundtrack having a cultural impact throughout the world, enhancing the disco scene's mainstream appeal. They won 5 Grammy Awards for Saturday Night Fever, including Album of the Year. They've sold over 120 million albums worldwide. Some estimates go up as high as 200 million. When you look at these numbers, like, they're so wildly vary for everybody, but we'll go with 120 to 200 million, a lot, placing them among the best-selling musical artists of all time, as well as the most successful trio in the history of contemporary music. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1997. The Hall's citation for them says this, quote, only Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, Garth Brooks, and Paul McCartney have outsold the Bee Gees. It's quite the company. With 9 #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100, they're the third most successful band in Billboard chart history, behind only the Supremes and, the Beatles. So, great info there. Just wanted to give you a little background. If you're watching this, you probably already know a lot about them, but I always like to give that there. Before we start the video, so you know, the music will not be in the video, but it'll be a Vimeo link below. So click on that. You can listen along with me. Let's kick this thing off. Starting us off, you see it below, number 10, To Love Somebody, off Bee Gees' First from 1967. Their third studio album, their first international album, though. So a lot of people recognize it as their first album. Written by Barry and Robin, second single release, 17 in the US, 41 in the UK. Ranked at 94 on NME's magazine's 100 Best Tracks of the 60s. Let me tell you something. You're going to be one of the 100 Best Tracks of the 60s. That's some rarefied air. In a 2017 interview with Piers Morgan, Barry was asked, of all the songs you've ever written, which song would you choose? Barry said that this one, To Love Somebody, was a song that he'd choose as it was a clear, emotional message. It's been recorded, of course, by many other artists. At the request of Robert Stigwood, the band's manager, Barry and Robin wrote To Love Somebody, a soulful ballad in the style of Sam and Dave or the Rascals. They wrote it for Otis Redding. He came to see Barry at the Plaza in New York City one night. Robin claimed that Otis Redding said he loved her material and would Barry write him a song. Robin said, everyone told us what a great record they thought it was. Other groups all raved about it, but for some reason, people in Britain just did not seem to like it. Barry said, I think the reason it didn't do well here was because it's a soul number. Americans loved it, but it just wasn't right for this country. So I do know this song, but I don't know a lot of the songs on this list. But I do know this one. I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Richard. All right, To Love Somebody. It also went to 6 in Australia and 9 in Canada. I didn't put that in there. You got Barry singing lead, and then the other two are on harmony and backing. I'm going to tell you right now, if that's the number 10 song, man, what does the rest of this list have for us, right? Because that song is so good. I mean, I know that song. And I probably know other people's versions of that song. Right? But remember, they wrote it. But my goodness, man. That song is absolutely fantastic. It's just great. I mean, I'm not giving you some sort of like detailed breakdown. There's really no breakdown to give to you. It's a fantastic song. Little orchestral arrangement on there, but they sound fantastic. Now, we're going to skip ahead quite a ways for number 9. 30 years to be exact. We got Alone off the Still Waters album in 1997. So 30 years later, written by all three of them, opening track on their 21st studio album. Lead single, Barry and Robin alternate on vocals. Morris explained about the track. That was one of the first ones we wrote for the album. I really remember having a good time writing it. We were sort of set up in the studio here with the three of us just together, and I got some bagpipe sounds. We were just screwing around. And BG programmed this groove on the computer. We thought it was cool. We don't actually go in and plan to write a ballad or an R&B song. We just say, let's go that route, and we'll follow it. And Alone came out of that. I love the line, I'm on a wheel of fortune with a twist of fate, because of the harmony and that chorus. It was like a bit of a 50s feel as well. And I like the idea of being that sort of Beatles type of song. I want that rambling, that sort of Birds type, the 12-string thing going. But we just did it with the bagpipes instead and made it all connect. It was a very exciting demo. We weren't too sure about the bagpipes, but Robin actually persisted. He said they're great. You got to keep the bagpipes. All right, man, let's go. All right, Alone. Obviously, it's 30 years later, right? So production values have come a long ways, but they've come a long ways just in the polish and the production and the layering of the vocals and the trading off of the vocals and the harmonies. Like this song, when you read the lyrics, it'll show you like who's singing what. I mean, you can kind of figure it out when you're listening to it, obviously, but like, it's really cool to see how they go back and forth. Like it was sort of been a lot to put together, but by this point they were just masters in the studio, right? All getting producing credit on it. Just fantastic. The girls, you know, he just want to be alone. It's an age-old story, right? It just never seems to work out for him. It's very well written too. Never seems to work out for him. He just always ends up alone. The line that he had mentioned, that Morris had mentioned, I'm on a wheel of fortune and with a twist of fate, because I know it isn't heaven. Is it love or hate? And later on in that verse, and if they're glory there to behold, maybe it's my imagination, another story there to be told. So just some really good stuff on here, man. Just some really good stuff. So 30 years later, it just shows you how impressive of a career they really had. All right, next up at number 8, we're actually going off Spotify for a minute. We got Ellen Vannon. Richard says, it's the Manx name for the Isle of Man. Really shows off Robin Gibb's voice brilliantly. It's going to be a live performance. And Ellen Vannon, what a fantastic performance. Robin sounds great, right? Just really dialed in there, man. Just really well done. That was from 1998 as well. I should have mentioned that at the start. So we're in 1998, so a year after Alone even. But I mean, they're still firing on all cylinders, man. But the power in that, everybody was just engrossed in it. Really, really well done. So we had 1967. Then we went to 97. Then we had our performance from 98. Now, we're going to dial that thing all the way back to 1967 again. We got New York mining disaster, 1941 from, of course, Bee Gees first. Debut American single, released in April of 67. Aside from a moderately successful reissue of their Australian single, Spicks and Specks, it was the first single release of the group's international career and their first song to hit the charts in both the UK and the US. Barry and Robin wrote it while sitting in a darkened stairway at Polydor Records following a power outage. The song recounts the story of a miner trapped in a cave-in. He's sharing a photo of his wife with a colleague, Mr. Jones, while they hopelessly wait to be rescued. According to the liner notes for the box set Tales from the Brothers Gibbs in 1990, the song was inspired by the October 1966 Aberfan disaster in Wales. According to Robin, there actually had been a mining disaster in New York in 1939, not in 1941, and he thought New York sounded more glamorous. Barry and Robin both lead and backing vocals. Robin sang the high harmony while Barry sang the lead low harmony, both on the first and second verse. Atco, the record company, distributed promos with a blank label. This was a rabbit hole I went into research. I won't go into all of it for you, but Atco, the record label, they distributed the promos with a blank label with the suggestion that it was an English group whose name started with B. Many DJs thought it was a new Beatles song and played the song heavily. Beatles lead guitarist George Harrison met Morris at a party several years later and told him that he bought a copy of New York Mining Disaster 1941 because he thought it sounded so much like the Beatles. Morris's response to Harrison was that the resemblance was unintentional, and Harrison said, "I knew that. I admire your work." Barry said this about the song: "If you sounded like the Beatles and could also write a hit single, then the hype of the machine would go into action and your company would make sure people thought you sounded like the Beatles or thought you were the Beatles. And that sold you, attracted attention to you. It was good for us because everyone thought it was the Beatles under a different name." And Robin said, "All the DJs on radio stations in the US picked it up immediately, thinking it was the Beatles, and it was a hit on that basis. It established us in those early years. It helped our following record, which was nothing like the Beatles." So I don't know if I know this song. When I researched it, obviously there's a ton of research that I didn't share with you, so maybe I do. Okay, two things. One, I never heard that song. Two, I can see why they thought it sounded like the Beatles, because it did sound like the Beatles, especially of this time in 1967. Stories about what I said, just telling Mr. Jones about the wife in case they don't make it out of there alive. But yeah, went to 3 in Australia, 12 in the UK, 14 in the US. The orchestral arrangement by Phil Denny's was absolutely integral to that song with that kind of sound. The song was great. Also, a little FYI that I found, the 1969 song from David Bowie's Space Oddity owes a debt to the style, arrangement, and lyrics of this song. Like this song, it is about a trapped man who's doomed to die, and the song is similarly structured as a series of statements addressed to another person. Space Odyssey was a Bee Gees type song, Bowie's colleague John Hutchinson had said. David knew it, and he said so at the time. The way he sang it, it's a Bee Gees thing. And the great Mark Bolan explained, I remember David playing me Space Oddity in his room, and I loved it. And he said he needed to sound like the Bee Gees, who were very big then. So it's kind of a weird thing, right? 1967, the Bee Gees are trying to sound like the Beatles. Now in 1969, Bowie is trying to sound like the Bee Gees. I just thought that was a cool thing. Next up at number 6, we got Run to Me from the To Whom It May Concern album in 1972. Lead single, 3 in Australia, 9 in the UK, 16 in the US. All 3 wrote it. Vocals, Barry and Robin. Run to Me, excellent orchestral arrangement there. Of course, Morris doing his thing on harmony, vocals, bass, piano, and rhythm guitar. His yeoman's work on the instrumentation. Just wanted to get that in there too. Good song, man. This girl is not in love with them, right? Not in love with Robin and Barry, who's singing this. And, Barry had not yet fully embraced the full falsetto that we're going to get once we get to the disco stuff. But we're not going to get to the disco stuff in this top 10. We've already talked about that. But so his voice is, a little more chilled out. I don't know. I mean, I like the falsetto too. Like I said, I'd love to do it for you, but I won't. But so the idea of the song is this girl's not in love with him, but he's saying, once you're crushed or hurt, is it wrong for me to open up your eyes to my love and you can run to me, basically? So a good song. All right, what's to the top 5? We got You Win Again from the ESP album in 1987. It's written by all 3. It marked the start of the band being popular again. It was #1 hit in a lot of European countries, and it topped the UK singles chart. That made it the band's first song to top that chart in over 8 years. It also made them the first band to score a UK #1 hit in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That is rarefied air. All right, You Win Again definitely sounds like 1987. Let me tell you, this guy right here was 16 years old in 1987. I know what it sounds like. It sounded like that. I've never heard this song, though, but it's really well done, right? You got that synth in there, but the production, 10 years later on Alone, I talked about how good the production was. The production on this is fantastic as well. And the story is, he lets her win every argument because he'd rather let her win than be right because he values their relationship. So if more couples could take that kind of mentality and attitude towards things, more people would probably stay together. But really, really well done. Rarefied air now, number 4. I've Got to Get a Message to You from the Idea album in 1968. Second #1 hit in the UK and their first US top 10. Barry re-recorded the song with Keith Urban for his 2021 album Greenfield. So you might know that. The song is about a man who, awaiting his execution in the electric chair, begs the prison chaplain to pass a final message on to his wife. Robin said that the man's crime was the murder of his wife's lover, though the lyrics do not explicitly allude to the identity of the victim. Robin said, quote, "This is about a prisoner on death row who only has a few hours to live. He wants the prison chaplain to pass on a final message to his wife. There's a certain urgency about it. Myself and Barry wrote it. It's a bit like writing a script. Sometimes you can sit there for 3 hours with your guitar and nothing will happen. Then in the last 10 minutes, something will spark," end quote. The song was written with Percy Sledge in mind to record it. He did record it in February of 1970, but Atlantic Records did not issue his version in the US at that time. Barry recalled, in those days, the lyrics were almost pretty well done on the spot. I don't remember the fundamentals of how the lyrics were formed, except that we were writing about a guy on death row. That was it. Features bass guitar lines by Morris. As Barry explained, he had a lot of intensity in his bass. Mo was a real McCartney bass freak, as a lot of us were. He would pick up on all the things that McCartney would do. Morris was very good on different instruments. Good lead guitarist, good bass player, good keyboard player. He was versatile. He loved playing bass more than anything else, I think, at that time. Now, this song's appeared in 5 versions, all made from the same recording. So that was really interesting. Same recording, but heard at 3 different speeds, faded out at 3 different points, and with 3 different elements mixed forward. So, yeah, I chose the version off the album, right? The version that was the single version. But you got Robin on lead on the first and third verse, and Barry comes in on the second verse. Morris is also playing the Mellotron on here. So let's get after that. Yeah, I know that song. I mean, I didn't know it great, but I knew it. I mean, I knew it going into it, but It's just so well done. You feel the emotion in it, and they're just so good. Even right here in 1968, just so good. I thought the drumming on here was also fantastic. Shout out to Colin Peterson on that, and Vince Maloney's on the lead guitar there. But it's really just all about Robin and Barry on those vocals, just so well done. And like I said, so emotive. For number 3, we're going to stay right there on the Idea album from 1968. We got I Started a Joke. It was not released as a single in the UK, but went to number 1 in Australia and 6 in the US. It's the last Bee Gees single to feature Vince Maloney's guitar work, as he left the band in early December after the song was released as a single. And it was the last song recorded for the album. According to Robin, the melancholic melody of the song was inspired by the sound on board an airplane. The melody of this one was heard aboard a British Airways Vickers Viscount about 100 miles from Essen. It was one of those old 4-engine prop jobs that seemed to drone the passenger into a sort of hypnotic trance. Only with this, it was different. The droning after a while appeared to take the form of a tune, which mysteriously sounded like a church choir. So it was decided. We accosted the pilot, forced him to land in the nearest village, and there in a small pub, we finished the lyrics with Barry. Actually, it wasn't a village. It was a city. It wasn't a pub. It was a hotel. And we didn't force the pilot to land in a field. But why ruin a perfectly good story? Barry said, there was a lot of that in those days. There was a lot of psychedelia and the idea that if you wrote something, even if it sounded ridiculous, somebody would find the meaning for it, and that was the truth. Robin Gibb's son played this on his phone just after his father died on May 20th, 2012. Robin John Gibb told the son, when he passed away, we went out. They took the equipment away and we came back in. I picked up my phone and found I Started a Joke on YouTube and played it. I put the phone on his chest, and that was the first time I broke down. I knew that song and its lyrics were perfect for that moment. That song will always have new meaning to me now. That gave me goosebumps, seriously, when I read that. Wow, that's powerful. All right, I Started a Joke. Robin talked about the abstract lyricism, and definitely the most abstract lyrics on this list so far. I think it's about ego of everything I read, because it's kind of what was going on then with psychedelia and everything. I thought the joke was on him. Then he figured out, like, he came free of what he was feeling and kind of became his true self and died to his ego. It's a lot of convoluted stuff. It sounds really good. Sounds really pretty. 2 songs left. We're going to jump forward quite a few years again, 25 years from the last song, For Whom the Bell Tolls, from the album Size Isn't Everything in 1993, their 20th studio album. It peaked at 4 on the singles charts in the UK, 6 in Ireland. It would be the band's highest charting single in the UK during the 90s, giving them a UK top 5 single in 4 consecutive decades, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Whom the Bell Tolls. I know I'm a broken record on it, especially with the older stuff, but I mean, not that the earlier stuff isn't fantastically done, but these are just professional musicians, man. Like, these guys just lay it down in the studio. Just fantastic. And this story is as old as time, right? She left him and he misses her and he's crushed by it, right? For Whom the Bell Tolls. We kind of get that in the first. I stumble in the night, never really knew what it would have been like. You're no longer there to break my fall, the heartache over you. I'd give it everything, but I couldn't live through. I never saw the signs. You're the last to know when love is blind. It kind of talks about all the years they were together and all of that stuff. And then saw her in a magazine. She was a picture, or she was at a party where she shouldn't have been, on the arm of someone else. So he's asking her if she'll please come back to him. And then verse 3 is particularly crushing. Now I know there will be times like this when I couldn't reach out to no one, and am I never going to find someone who knows me like you do? Are you leaving me a helpless child when it took so long to save me? So, when you're with that person for so long and they know you better than anybody else, and they know all your stuff and they're gone, and you need to share something with someone, or you're going through something with someone, and you reach out and like, there's no one there because no one really knows you. So well written and well done. All right, we have arrived to number 1, Richard's number 1 Bee Gees song. We got Massachusetts from the Horizontal album in 1968. It's written by all 3. It was released in 1967, the album in 68. Became the first of the group's 5 number 1 hits in the UK and reached number 1 in 12 other countries, 11 in the US. They had never actually been to Massachusetts when they recorded the song. They just liked the sound of the name, as it was unusual, containing a lot of S's. It's written in the Regis Hotel in New York City during a tour of the US. It was intended as an antithesis to flower power anthems of the time, such as Let's Go to San Francisco, and San Francisco, be sure to wear your flowers in your hair. And that protagonist had been to San Francisco to join the hippies, but was now homesick. The idea of the lights having gone out in Massachusetts was to suggest that everyone had gone to San Francisco, which a lot of them did. It's originally intended for the Seekers, Upon arriving in London from Australia, following in the path of the Seekers, who had arrived several years earlier, the Bee Gees had been unsuccessful in getting the song to the group, so they decided to record it themselves. During a chance meeting in London between the Seekers' lead singer Judith Durham and Morris, Durham learned that Massachusetts was originally intended for her group, and in 2003, they recorded this song as a tribute to Morris following his death earlier that year. Wow, that's fantastic. We got Robin on lead here. Massachusetts, it kind of had that different sound to it, right? It was kind of not like totally like one of the San Francisco songs, but it had that, the little bell, the little thing. Orchestral arrangement from Bill Shepard's right on point. Morris is playing the mellotron again, along with bass, of course, and piano, but a really good choice for number one. A song I never heard. That will bring me to my favorite tracks, and most of these songs I had never heard. Look, I enjoy doing this channel. I love doing this channel. Right? It's great for me. It's great for my mental health. I just enjoy. I love music. I love discovering all kinds of things. So the fact that I get to do this is a huge blessing. But so I enjoy everything I do. But this is one of them that I particularly enjoyed. This one was fantastic. So I don't want to give you 10 favorites. So I kind of got to cut some stuff down. But we'll go honorable mentions. Run to Me. I Started a Joke, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and Massachusetts. My faves are going to be To Love Somebody, New York Mining Disaster 1941, and I've Got to Get a Message to You. Just a fantastic list. Some of you are not going to like that the disco aren't on here. I think some of you are going to really like that the disco wasn't on here. So there's probably going to be, and I like the disco stuff too, man. I mean, nobody did it better than the Gibb brothers, man. But this is a fantastic list. So let me know what your favorites are down below. Remember, trying to put something like this together for a band as iconic as the Bee Gees is next to impossible. So give me your top 10 or your suggestions, but be nice, man. Throw Richard some love because it's fantastic that he put this together. I super appreciate it. If you haven't already, give this a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. We got over 2,600 videos right now on the channel. And until next time, guys, I will see you.